Yeah, I'll see your name on the logs.
Good afternoon everyone, and welcome to November's online seminar, the fifth in the programme of 9 seminars. Our subject today is inspirational leadership, and will you welcome please our guest speaker from Progress International Limited, Ken Marshall.
Thank you, welcome, afternoon. Right, we're going to do roughly 30 minutes session. Now I've built in a bit of time at the end because I know we've got questions that could be coming through. So we're going to make a little bit of time for us to actually answer those questions. And obviously I welcome questions from yourself as well as we go through. I am going to get you involved in a little bit of it. To put it into context, it's a taster session, as you know. My aim here is to whet your appetite, to go away and to find out more information about how to become an inspirational leader, assuming of course you aren't already one to be proud of. So on that note, I'm going to ask you a question. It's already on the board. What is it that makes an inspirational leader? Now, what I'd like you to think about here for a moment are perhaps people you've worked for, who's been your leader in the past, or maybe you know somebody who's worked for a leader and in conversation and said, "Oh, I work for this fantastic boss." Now, what do you believe goes towards making an inspirational leader? What if you could recognise, if somebody said to you, "Pull us out some examples. What is it that makes an inspirational leader?" What would it be for you? Throw something out there.
Motivator.
Motivator. Okay. A motivator. What else? Visionary.
Someone who inspires confidence.
Okay. Inspires confidence.
And is passionate.
Passionate. Good one. Any others?
Clear communicator.
Clear communicator. Any others?
Trustworthy.
Ah, that's right. Trustworthy. Any more?
Involves you in what's going on.
Involves you. Okay, we've got some good ones there. Motivator, visionary, inspires confidence. So far, intangible stuff. But we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail. Passionate, more intangibles. Clear communicator, a bit more tangible stuff there possibly. Trustworthy, we'll have a look at that. And involves you. Now just have a look at this top word for a moment. Motivator is interesting. How can a leader motivate their people? What are usually the tools that people use to motivate people? What's the obvious ones that people tend to use easiest when I'm in a leader, management type position? What's the ones that come easiest to me?
Enthusiasm.
Okay, well I'm thinking about me motivating my team.
Reward.
Reward, yeah. That's a good word. Reward or bribery. Yeah, sort of way you want to call it. What else?
Recognition.
Recognition, yeah. So reward, recognition, bribery. What's the other tool?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm, yeah. So maybe a bit of leading by example. If I'm enthusiastic about it, it might rub off on you if I'm lucky. Any others? You're thinking of one?
I was going to say we've had the carrots. I suppose there's always the stick.
That's what I was waiting for, yeah. What's the stick? What's the, okay, there's the punishment, there's the fear factor, there's the, okay, look, if you don't do it, there's plenty of people out there that can do your job. And so there's always that balance. But because what's the problem with that type of motivation is it's external. And when we look in terms of inspirational leadership, it ties in with the motivation. Because what I've got to remind people is that it's actually not easily possible to motivate people on a long-term basis from external sources. Even with reward and recognition, I need to be doing something else which actually increases their self-motivation.
Yeah. All you can do is actually create an environment where people are motivated,
Yeah.
rather than directly being motivated by an individual.
Yeah, and when we get that right, when we actually recognise that it's not just, okay, we'll always have the external motivators to use, but when we recognise actually this, the inspirational leader is using something else, he's actually using an extra few elements, maybe going to a different level. He's found perhaps some secrets here, perhaps some key elements which we haven't discovered, which, as you quite rightly say, means it helps me motivate myself. What the inspirational leader tends to create is a team of want-to people. Yeah, they actually want to be there, they want to work for the person, even though the job itself may be inherently mundane, monotonous, it's maybe not a pleasant job, but actually I'm still going to come in because I don't want to let the boss down, I don't want to let the team down, I actually want to be there for other reasons. And it's interesting that the research shows that the difference between have-to people and want-to people is quite significant. Want-to people tend to be 8 to 10 times more productive than have-to people. Have-to people tend to work to the lowest denominator. Once that climate and culture is created, I'm thinking, what's the least I can get away with before I get kicked? Because the stick's going to happen, so I might as well see what I can do to avoid it, but what's the minimum I can get away with? Okay, let's have a look at how we can actually perhaps use some history, use some examples. Already we've got some of the key elements. Now what we've got to make sure is, have we got all the elements that make an inspirational leader? Because it says, to use a phrase, none of this is rocket science. It's all there for us to actually tap into and say, if I can replicate this, I can actually do this for me. What's often missing for many people is knowing where to start, knowing what the elements are, and to do that stop check. I mean, one of the things we're looking at here in personal development is having a quick assessment of ourselves and going, what elements have I currently got? Have I got everything I need in each element? Are there extra pieces I need to learn for those elements? And are there other elements I haven't yet got which I can add? Just cast your mind back, history. I want you to just throw out for me a few leaders that you believe have been very successful, very effective, very inspirational leaders in history. People, leaders that we can all relate to and tap into.
Churchill.
Churchill. He always comes up. Funny that.
It's a bad one, but Hitler.
He always comes up too.
Margaret Thatcher.
Thatcher, yeah. Any others? Branson. Any more?
Ferguson.
Ferguson. Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, now, what traits would you say they had in common, good and the bad, that actually made them the effective and inspirational leaders that they were in their time?
Vision.
Vision.
Yeah, it's the key.
What else?
Drive.
Drive.
Ambition.
Ambition.
Prepared to take risks.
Yeah. Risk taker.
Confidence.
Confidence. What else?
Arrogance.
Who are you thinking of there?
Oh,
I think that's Ferguson.
That'll be Ferguson.
oh that's, yeah, but he's good.
Maybe Thatcher. I don't know.
Yeah.
Any others? Any other things? So we've got vision, drive, ambition, risk taker, confidence, arrogance,
Influence.
influence,
Single-mindedness.
Communicators.
yeah, all extremely effective communicators. I mean, even if you take Hitler, who was, as you say, he's a bad one, what made him get to where he got to with all the people was that he was a very influential communicator, albeit it was through the manipulation side, let me give you this vision and then change the goalpost once I'm in power, but he was still very effective to actually sway that support at that time. And if you think about when Thatcher got to power, back in '79, it was on the basis of things weren't going well, there was a crisis, she said, here's what's happening now, here's the vision, and they communicated it in such a way that you believed it would happen and therefore you went along with that process. So there's one more in there which hasn't come out yet, but it ties in with passion, it ties in with confidence, and it's often what we believe is something you're probably born with. What do we say these really inspirational people tend to have?
Personality.
Personality, charisma, yeah. Charisma. So the question is, what is charisma? because we know that inspirational leaders, whether they are world famous leaders or whether they work in big organisations or even smaller organisations, the inspirational leaders tend to have this charisma. And quite often there's a lot of myth going around about charisma. Oh, charisma. Oh, if only I was lucky enough to be born with that, that'd be really good. But let me tell you and let you into a secret. Charisma is not anything you're born with. It's something that you actually generate from a number of factors coming together. And we can all do that. We can all actually make that happen. Let me show you what I mean. What we're going to do is take you through. There's 4 key elements that we can actually pinpoint that are in inspirational leaders. Most of them are in here already. Passion, purpose, listening, and meaning. Okay, passion is very important. When we look at charisma, what we're actually looking at here is a combination of being passionate about a vision that you believe in so strongly that your confidence levels of communicating this actually reach new heights. If you think about any time in the past where you've actually really believed in something and you really want to influence somebody to go along with the idea, you suddenly lose all self-consciousness. You just want to communicate that idea because you so believe in it and you feel so strongly about it and you're so passionate about it that you start communicating in a way which actually creates this picture. Okay, yeah, you convinced me. When you pull those together, what you actually get is the energy generated from that, and we say the person's got charisma. It's like a presence, it becomes a presence. Sometimes key performers have got it. They're a presence on the stage. It's all that stuff coming together. So if you can actually get passionate enough about something, really believe enough about something, and communicate it clearly in a confident and energetic way, guess what people will say you've got? Charisma. So you can actually create it. It's not something you're just born with. Obviously purpose. We know that inspirational leaders, in order to actually get their people to follow them, have to be very clear as to what's the purpose, what's the point of all this, where are you taking us to? And therefore they actually have very good communication skills, particularly on the listening side. People that become just leaders, or think they're leaders, tend to be communicators in the telling way. Okay, let me tell you what I want, let me tell you what you need to do. But an inspirational leader has to tell sometimes, but they recognise the important part of it is listening. How many people here have ever been talking to somebody and realised that the person they're talking to is not listening to them? What does it feel like? Now you imagine you've got a team of people there, you want to influence them to follow you, but you don't listen to them. Are you building strong rapport with them? I doubt it very much. What do we mean by meaning? Well, if I've got this passion, and I've got this purpose that's very clear, and I'm listening to people in terms of how they can get involved with this, what I also communicate to people is the meaning behind the actions. And what we find in terms of really motivating people is if they've actually got a reason for doing your request, they're more likely to do it. I can see where it fits in, I can see how my contribution will make a difference. And that's how it works. So remember that one, passion, purpose, listening and meaning. We're going to build on that a bit further. What the research shows is that there are a number of theories about leadership. Who is it that becomes a leader? Well, the theories are these. There's the trait theory, there's the great events theory, and there's the transformational leadership theory. Now, if we look at the trait theory, did anyone used to see the programme which they bring back called Now Get Out of That? Where they put a group of people together, usually never met before, and they wouldn't actually assign a leader. They'd usually put them somewhere like on the moors or in the Lake District in the middle of nowhere and say, here's some equipment, here's your task, you've got 2 days to hit that target, to achieve that objective. And what tended to happen is that, depending on the individual's character traits, that eventually somebody would actually say, look, somebody needs to be taking control of this. And their natural character traits meant that they were perhaps more assertive, more confident, able to actually perhaps see what's going on, take the bigger view, and eventually they would assert themselves and take over the role of leader. And that would be an example of trait theory. Great events theory, what would be an example there of people rising to the occasion during a great event?
Churchill.
Churchill, yeah. Was he ever a peacetime leader? He was perceived to be a fantastic war leader, because that was how he aspired to that. He rose to that occasion. There was another one in modern times that's remembered now in New York. 9/11. What's his name? The mayor. Well, he was just exited, wasn't he? And he was then perceived. He wrote a book on it. Made a few million. And it's just like, okay, this crisis happened, and therefore somebody has to be seen to take control and become, if you like, motivation. If you think of Churchill during those trying times, he kept the nation's morale up by actually having this vision, this purpose, putting meaning behind it, and driving determination and passion. Okay, so those are the key theories that we tend to either character, great events, the ones we're really interested in for business, for where we are in terms of development. What's the most useful one for us is the transformational leadership theory, which says that anybody can learn to become a leader. But there's a number of characters and traits that we do need to have, and we can build on, we can work on. But one of the key characteristics of a trait, in fact, you tell me first of all, what do you think the number one characteristic is of becoming a leader? What do you think would be? You have to give me one trait. Sorry?
Communication.
Communication, you say. Any others? What would it be?
Passion.
Passion.
You have to be adaptive, you have to be able to learn.
Right, you've got to be able to learn, you've got to be willing to learn, so you've got to be able to open the mind, yeah? Here's what it is. Making the decision to become a leader. Okay, but it's about decision making. I'm going to decide to become a leader. But what I want people to start doing is not make a decision just to become a leader. I want you to make a decision to become an inspirational leader. And it means looking at in a bit more detail, well, what are the elements of that? What actually are the ingredients that make up an inspirational leader? But that's the first one, actually making that decision, making that choice. It's no good getting into a situation, oh, this job, this leadership thing. Yeah, but it's a choice. You weren't forced into it. And that's the key. If you start from that basis, you can then start to do it. What it ties in with is this willingness to learn. Okay, I've made the choice, now what have I got to do? Where am I now? Where do I want to be? What are the other things I need to learn? Excuse me. So, most important characteristic. What we also find, and it ties in with what we've just been saying here, is that inspirational leaders exhibit a unique blend of these. And we're going to look at in a moment is how we can break these down into more tangible things, like what you can actually do to go away and start reading up and finding out a bit more information, putting stuff into experience, learning, charisma, vision, and behaviour traits that attract people to follow them. And that's a pretty important one, because you can't force people to follow you. And let's face it, the definition of leadership means you've got followers. Now, if you believe that just being a leader is enough for people to follow you, what you might find one day is when you turn around and have a look, there's no one behind you. You're there on your own. So we've got to try and say, okay, so what are these behaviours? So these are the more tangibles. What I want you to have inside your own minds is the vision. Where do you want your team to be in 6 months, 12 months? Okay, it ties in with the business objective, sure. But what does that mean? How can you actually make that something more tangible for your team to follow? How do you relate to your boss? Your boss gives you these targets and say, okay, that's what you've got to achieve. Now, you can't do it on your own. We're going to give you a team of 10 people. So therefore, you're now reliant on 10 other people for you to get the rewards that you believe you will be worthy of at the end of the year. You can't do it without the help. How do you get a group of people who want to help you achieve that, rather than just have to be there because they need the job? And we all know about having to do some charisma, creating some charisma, developing your self-confidence. Okay? What would you say in terms of becoming, the thought of becoming an inspirational leader, what would you say would be your toughest challenge? What would go through, if you were to say, right, okay, that's my from today, I'm going to plan to become an inspirational leader, what would be my toughest challenge?
Could be sharing the vision or getting people to see the vision.
Okay.
Want to share the same vision as you.
Okay, so from that, what would be the key skills you could start to learn, develop yourself in, to ensure that happens?
Communication.
Communication. Now, communication is an umbrella term, so if you were to chunk down communication, what would that mean you could focus on?
How is the communication that's effective to get that message across?
Okay, which would be?
Well, all forms. It would be verbal communication,
Okay.
written communication to follow up.
Yeah. Any others?
I think you've got to paint a picture and also try to understand what's in it for the person to try and match what they want, what they'll
Right.
get from.
Yeah.
That's it, but that's the tricky one, making sure you've got the right hooks for different people, so that
Right.
you're pulling on the things that are important to them,
Yeah.
and they're the right things that are important to them, not just.
So it goes back to this, what is it that motivates the people that work for you? And of course, and I've covered this in previous ones. I mean, what do we believe? I mean, what's the usually most common answer I get when I say, what motivates your people to come to work for you, leader? What do they say? Money. It's a nonsense, of course. Absolutely nonsense. And there'll be people that say, no, I actually do come for money. Yeah, well, I do too, because that's a given, that's in the contract. I'm not working for a voluntary organisation, I'm working to get paid. I'd like some more money, but therefore it's not for money. So therefore, what buttons can I press? And one of the things an inspirational leader would do through communication is to create what with their people? Rapport, relationships, yeah. It's actually, when I get people on courses and say, I've got this performance issue with this person, I say, what you need to look at first is the relationship. Because if you've got strong rapport, you've usually got something else that's quite strong with them too, which is the other R word.
Respect.
Respect. Yeah, usually if you've got strong rapport with somebody, there's usually quite a strong element of respect there. What you usually find, if you've got rapport and respect with somebody, you tend to not to do stuff that ticks them off. Without good reason, without really good reason, and therefore you can actually mend those things. So if you've got this constantly, I heard people say, oh, they're always doing this. And I'll say, how many things have you tried? Everything. Well, everything, that's interesting. Give us the list, it must be huge. There's about 4 things on it. And they're all usually variations of the same thing. So I want to, if you think about it in terms of what type of leader would you like to work for, what type of leader would actually inspire you to want to come to work and do the very best you could for that person. And I don't expect you to answer that now, but that's the question I asked myself when I first got into leadership many years ago. And I worked for a company that tended to actually, in at the deep end, we'd train you perhaps sometime in the future. So I was thinking, okay, this is quite scary. Let me think about this. Okay, what type of leader would I like to work for? And I'd actually wrote all those things down and said, okay, what I'm going to aspire to be is the things that I would like to actually see happen to me. And therefore I need to go out, okay, where can I go out and find this stuff? Where can I go learn about this? Whose brains can I pick? Okay, that's what we've got to look at. Now, what we know is some secrets here, and we call them secrets, but actually once we discovered them, a lot of the things, some of these stuff we've already got. Some of these things we go, oh, I didn't realise it was that as well, that would be useful. It's rather like the communication stuff, yeah? The communication topic itself is so huge, and it's about, again, spending some time on our own development plan, chunking that down. What are you already good at? What else do you need some information on and some training in? Now remember, the very first flip chart sheet we looked at was that passion, purpose, listening. Listening is the key skill. Listening is the skill that actually helps you build rapport. It actually helps you create a relationship. We all know what we feel like not to be listened to. It's even more frustrating when we believe people don't understand us, or people aren't showing us a genuine interest in what we've got to say. What we find is that inspirational leaders recognise these key things. They need to attract followers. They can't force people to want to follow them. They've got to attract them. And therefore we're going to look at what behaviours are. Well, listening's a good one. Also that they recognise that the people that are working for them need to feel confident of the direction they're being led in. And again, if you look at the world leaders from the past, how did they get all those followers? Because they suddenly generated through the communication process a confidence of, yeah, I feel safe, I feel confident in the way he's taking us. Sometimes they found that it wasn't what it was made out to be when they got there, but that's a different story. They also recognise that people want to feel enabled and empowered. Now, empowered has been one of those buzzwords that's been going around for some time. And I've worked for many organisations that will tell me when I go in, oh yeah, people are empowered. They're really empowered. And I go and speak to the people and they go, I wish I'd give us some responsibility. And And so therefore the empower bit is a word, but not actually driven through. What the inspirational leader looks at is, okay, how do I actually make that more than just a word? What does it actually mean for the person on my team to be empowered, to be enabled? They're also, and this is the word that came out from you earlier, is that people like to follow leaders who are accountable and trustworthy. Okay, I trust where you're taking me, I trust what you're telling me is true. You know, I trust that you're going to keep certain things confidential, I trust that you're actually going to care for my welfare, and that you're interested in me as an individual. Even though we know there's a job to do, I'm accountable as a leader, I'm trustworthy. That's what I want to generate in people. Also, the leader takes responsibility to analyse, in particular, any problems. What they don't do is go out and seek someone to blame. Now, while there may be some blame that needs to be a proportion somewhere because something's happened, maybe through some negligence which we can deal with, in the initial stages, I'm only interested as a leader to get the thing right as quickly as possible. And I know that in order to do that, I'm probably going to need the assistance of the team that's with me. But if I go around immediately going into blame mode, I'm probably going to get people to withdraw, because the best form of self-defence for many people is just to say, keep your head down. Or there's a problem there, we'll hide that, and then more problems become crises. And somebody mentioned an interesting word earlier about generating a climate. Again, an inspirational leader would say, how do I generate this climate of support and cooperation so people feel safe to take risks? And it actually comes in from if I'm creating an environment where people know that I'm not going to go seeking blame, I'm going to seek assistance, and then we're going to deal with the issue, is that they are more prepared to take risks as long as they use responsibility and reasonableness. Okay, so they can take those risks. I want people to be able to do something without me being there, as long as they're behaving in a reasonable and responsible way. And that's up to me to make sure that happens. I've got to coach that in. I've got to train that in, perhaps communicate it in, create the environment. Excuse me. The inspirational leader also recognises that people need to be rewarded and recognised, and that's what the individuals are looking for. The best bosses I worked for were the people that, when you needed telling something was wrong, they told you, but in a reasonable and fair way, and when you did something well, they told you that you're doing well. And that was the balance of what we were looking for. The inspirational leader also helps their people answer that question, which ties in with the meaning. What's in this for me? You want me to do this task, but what's the benefit to me? And it's what you were saying, it's about hitting the right buttons. This is your motivator, this is why it's going to be beneficial to you. And the communication process, communicating fully and clearly. Now, has anybody here heard of John Adair? He's one of the people I recommend people to get the book, Action-Centered Leadership. It's a 3 circles model. It's been around for some time, and what I like about it is that it does tie in with the analogy that we use, or I like to use with leaders, is that of being a juggler. You've got all these balls in the air, you're trying to keep everybody sweet, and everything's got to happen. And that's quite a task, that's quite a skill to learn. The work that John Adair did, he did a lot of research based on the Second World War. And what he found was, in terms of this communication fully, giving people the information that was required to do the task over the period, he found that the better that was, the more likely it was to happen, even if the leader was suddenly not there. And the examples he found was that regiments who were behind enemy lines had a really really high level of crisis to try and get this project done. There were those leaders that believed in the secret code to the nth degree, and that they'd only drip feed stuff out as they thought people would need it, kept everything very secret. There was the other leader who actually was trustworthy, and he would actually say, well, people need to know the whole picture here to do the best job, and they would actually communicate the exact objective. Now, what was interesting with the 2 teams he found was that whenever they went out and the leader got separated or taken out, the team that was kept in the dark ceased to function. They actually really struggled to finish because they didn't know where it was going. The other team, actually, because they had a good idea of what was happening, they could continue the actual project and finish it. Now, you imagine the sign of a good leader is that when you're not there, the department still runs sweet and smooth. Because there's going to be times when you are away for a week, 2 weeks, you don't want to come back to crisis. It should run smoothly without you. So what he was saying, and this is one of the things that we would focus on other training, is, okay, how do I balance this task? How do I actually make sure the individual's developed, motivated and informed? And how do I maintain the team? And the reason they're interlinked is if any one of these are out of kilter, it affects all of them. So that's the key thing I want us to focus on, I want you to focus on. That's where you can start to look at the key tangibles of becoming an inspirational leader. So in summary, what I'd like to do is share with you the key aspects, put it together, what I want you to go out and look at in terms of becoming an inspirational leader. Or more inspirational, if you already are one. Passion and vision, attract the followers. Will and determination, intend to no matter what. There's those that commit, those that try. The inspirational leader intends to no matter what's happening. Courage, there's always personal risk taking. Okay, we've got to make decisions. Confidence, no fear of failure. Failure does not exist in the inspirational leader's vocabulary. There's only feedback, we can just redo it. Caring, empathise with the people. Charisma, I want to build rapport. I want people to work with me because they want to. Authenticity, say what you mean what you say, but also do it in a compassionate way. I don't mean sort of like whacking them over the head. And obviously connectedness. Learn from everyone, that's the listening. Just because you're the leader, you haven't got monopoly on all the best ideas. Involve everybody in the ideas, and therefore you find that all of that together will equal inspirational leadership. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope you found this useful to go away and start digging a bit deeper. Any questions?
Well, we have a question here from James O'Hara in Business Pages, who asks, how does an inspirational leader who recognises that they are one measure continuous improvement?
From the feedback that they will be getting continuously from the people that work for them. And in fact, the inspirational leaders that I've come across are quite open to get feedback, and they welcome feedback. Yeah, I mean, how well am I doing now? Is there anything I could be doing differently that would actually make me even better as a boss than I am now? Now, obviously, you need to create the time first, because otherwise they're just going to take what you think you want to hear. Oh, you're great, fantastic. So yeah, that's how you would measure. It's an ongoing thing, and it's from the feedback and your results. High labour turnover is usually something that is not working for you. Any others? Anyone here? Any questions? No? Well, thank you very much for your time and attention. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ken. And if that's inspired you to find out more about this topic, please check out the Learning Zone on HR Online. And join us again on the 14th of December when our topic will be handling emotions. Thank you very much.